It was really interesting. But so I have been to Puerto Rico, and it's a beautiful place, but it's really the home of the IRS. That's where the real IRS trust is, in Puerto Rico. And it's very interesting, although it's a possession of the United States, nobody in Puerto Rico pays income taxes. They just don't do it.
Hmm.
They're just as subject to it as people in the United States are, which is not. But the ones in Puerto Rico, I think they have a better understanding of it, and they don't. They just don't. Anyway, the government in Puerto Rico has gotten, like any other government that we know, out of hand. And right now they owe $20,000 for every Puerto Rican citizen, every not just a citizen, for every Puerto Rican man, woman, and child. They owe $20,000 per person. In a country that the average wage is $19,000 a year. How are they going to pay?
They probably ain't. There, probably a lot of Wall Street bankers will get a lot of land instead, houses and whatever assets they have over there.
But see, I don't think people in governments understand that when a government spends your money, they spend your stuff. I don't think people understand that. That if your government spends too much, you're the loser. They'll come and take your house. They'll take your car. They'll tell you how to live. That's the upshot of a government that spends too much. And right now, it's very frightening in the United States if you look at the debt. If you think about it, I don't know how much the debt is right now per person in the United States. I don't think it can be far behind. But debt means they made an agreement with somebody to pay money, and when they don't pay money...
And the fact is, we didn't make that agreement. It was sneaked upon us because we don't understand it, and they do what they want to.
But they believe we did, because they believe that we have a representative form of government, and they represented us, so they just dig deeper and deeper in debt.
Yeah.
And like the teachers in Detroit right now are striking because Detroit is decimated, and they think they're digging their way out, but Detroit can't come out of their mess, because in order to come out of Detroit's mess, it would have to default on pension payments. The reason Detroit got in the mess it is because the pensions in Detroit were so magnanimous, to not just to government workers, but to teachers, etc. And they gave huge pensions to people that were in the teachers union, for one, and especially to government workers, big pensions. Well, they've gone to court. They filed bankruptcy, but the bankruptcy court says they can't get out of the pensions. It's something they can't write off. So there's no way out for Detroit. There's just no way out. There's no way in the world they can continue to pay these pensions. They have to slash them, they have to do away with them, and the courts have said no. So that's really, in my opinion, a really impossible position. Another reason that courts, don't bank on courts giving you any good news anytime soon. Then Cray sent me something the other day that to tell the disparity between the people that work for governments and the people that work in industrial jobs in this country. And it's like 28 million to 18 million. So it's not
in
quite...
terms of the size of the working...
Yeah. And I'll get those figures so I can have them accurate next time we meet. But if you have 28 over here, million, billion, I don't know which it is, I guess it would be million because we don't have billion in our country, and 28 of these working in government positions over here, we've got 18 working over in manufacturing positions or trades of some sort, or anyway, these are the ones paying taxes. These are the ones getting paid by the taxes. You got 28 to 18. The ratio is unsustainable. Unsustainable, because all of the 28 get pensions. All of the 18 get, let me see, is it the shaft? I'm not quite sure what to say about that. It's a no-win situation, and there's nowhere to go. on a local front, you and I went to an appeals hearing the other day, an oral arguments hearing. It's not my first rodeo, but it was Ted's first time to go. And it was, the issue was a woman that we know who ran for city council, and she didn't get elected, and her opponent did, and she felt there was something wrong with the count, and so she sued. Now, you know more about that. What's the real background on Laura?
Well, the background of the basis for the appeal were when we shifted to having non-paper elections. There was the legislature set up safeguards so that it could be shown that they were legal elections and that it accurately reflected the electorate that used the voting machines.
In other words, the vote could be counted if challenged.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was the purpose. And there were three different areas where it was supposed to automatically make totals and summaries, starting even with the day of the election at the time of the closing of the polls. None of the three happened. And so, you know, it just seemed, and it was even given the approval by the people in the Secretary of State. And so she said, look, all the earmarks were there of a fixed election, and so she sued, and it seemed real reasonable in all the arguments that I heard. I couldn't hear the lady talking in that thing.
Oh, I heard that. I heard that.
Yeah. So that's what it was about.
But she believes that the election was rigged.
Mm-hmm.
The results of the election were rigged.
Mm-hmm.
And those of us that have watched these things, we've actually seen the rigging. I mean, you know, one time the one who sits over the elections in our county, her name is Dana DeBevois, she's the Travis County clerk. Somebody went up to her and said, you know, there aren't that many people voting in the precinct that's left for this county commissioner, and it seems to be really tallying up an unbelievable amount. She said, oh, I don't think that's possible. Anyway, she disappeared, and pretty soon the meter started going backwards real fast.
Yeah, I can remember a vote that I did years ago. It must have been at least 20 years ago. Maybe closer to 3 decades, I don't know. But I always voted for third-party candidates because I trusted them more than the corporations that are the Democratic and the Republicans. So I was either voting for Green or for Libertarian, but every time I did, and then pulled the thing, why, it switched back to the Republican candidate and it had me vote for that. You know, and I tried it 4 or 5 times, and it never would let me vote for a third-party
I've
candidate.
never voted with one of these machines because I stopped voting years ago. So you can see who you're voting for, and then you finalize the purchase, or what?
Yeah, and then you do that, and then you see who you voted for. And it was different every time I did that. It was not the one that was there when I pulled the lever, you know.
So what did you do?
Well, I walked away.
You didn't go get an election official and say I can't vote?
I didn't back then. It seemed, you know, I mean, what was the old racist joke? They said, you know, where the guy says, well, I can't read that big print, but I had small print, but the big print says ain't no nigger going to vote in Alabama this year.
I believe that to be true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, right now, today we have an election and we have some controversy on the ballot today that's up for vote, and it has to do with ride-sharing companies. And I can't tell. I mean, I'm an educated woman. I can't tell if I were voting whether I'd vote for or against, because it's worded so strangely. You know, I don't want the city to be in charge of regulating ride-sharing companies. That's what I know I don't want.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't tell from how it is on the ballot which of those would accomplish that purpose. Would kick the city out and let Uber and Lyft regulate themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's for or against. So when they have a controversy that people feel adamantly about, and there are a lot of people here that feel adamant about being able to have Uber and Lyft, without the city butting its nose in. Well, they're better people than I, because, you know, now we have ads on the television that say, I don't want the city to be able to do fingerprinting and all that. I want to leave it up to the companies. So that's why I'm voting against the proposition. That's what that means. So, you know, I don't know whether I can test those either. So lucky for me, I don't vote. But if it's an issue that's just not a name up there, they make it so convoluted that the average person, or even the above average person, would not be able to ascertain what he's or she is voting for. So so how do you think this must happen a lot on these voting machines? So if I was voting for 3 or C, and I pulled the machine and I walked away, which I assume people do, they figure out which one it is they want, they set it and they walk away. So I'm not sure that most of the people that vote even understand this issue. Well, the issue before the court the other day was imaging. During the trial phase of this, Dana DeBevois, the one I previously mentioned, the Travis County clerk, said she didn't keep an image, and Laura Presley's side's attorney said, but it says in the manufacturer's instruction booklet that that's part of the thing. You have to keep a ballot image, and a ballot image is a picture of the ballot. So like on microfiche, you can go back and you can actually see if the vote's right. So they have to have a way to be able to accurately, in retrospect, judge who voted for whom. And she said, no, I don't. She said, why? She said, well, because the Secretary of State told me I didn't have to. So the Secretary of State told you to break the law and break the instructions. Is that right? Well, I guess so. Or something to that effect. So they don't have to follow any stinking regulations. I mean, they don't have to follow. I contested a property tax case, and I got the transcript back on it. In reality, this is what happened. I said to the judge, this person that collects the taxes has no authority they don't have the proper paperwork. They have no authority to enter the public trust and collect money. And he said, I don't care. But I don't care is not on the transcript. So I have to go back to the court reporter and say, I don't believe this is accurate. It just says overruled. Like it was an objection.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the transcript says. So I clearly remember this judge saying, when I would say something, he would say, I don't care. I don't care. I mean, legal principles. Legal.
Yeah.
Not, and no theft here principles.
Yeah.
I don't care.
When I used to act, I was acting pro se for some traffic things. Then I was arguing, you know, can I introduce the law that I'm supposed to have broken? He said, I will decide what the law is in this court.
Absolutely.
And it said things that can I send a legal dictionary into the court, to the jury room, so they can see what these words mean? Transportation.
I will be the lawgiver.
I am the law here. You know.
I will be the lawgiver. Yeah, I had a jury trial once, and I relied on the law to sell this property to this man, and they were trying to set it aside, and I said, I had a big placard with the law on it. I wasn't allowed to show it, and he kept saying, I will be the lawgiver, because in a jury trial, the judge is supposed to be the lawgiver to the jury, and the jury is the fact giver. They decide on the facts, and so they just deny the law, is what happens. So, anyway, back to the appellate court, the oral hearings. The opposition said, now let's face it, guys, let's just look at this logically. I know there's no place for logic in a government entity, but look at it logically. Once upon a time we had paper ballots, and in Oklahoma, I registered, when I moved there, I registered as a Republican, and I was the only one in the county, so that I was they just came with bearing gifts saying, would you please be a judge at our elections? Because, you know, there aren't any more like you, so I'd love to. Oh, Bug. So I would always be a judge at the local elections. Had a wonderful time. These women that I worked with, no men volunteered for that, were lovely, and at the end of the day, I looked while they counted the ballots, so I could see the ballots, and they counted correctly, and I signed off on it. And if it was challenged, they would have been able to look at the ballots. We don't have that with the machines. However, the manufacturer says, in the case of a contested election, there is a picture, a ballot image. It's called a ballot image. So the opposition argues that image doesn't mean that at all. Image just means that you have a tally sheet that says somebody voted for this one and somebody voted for that, and gave a very lucid argument that image didn't mean a picture of the thing. So I know what will happen, because the judges on the court kept saying to Dr. Presley's attorney, are you saying that we should disenfranchise the voters who voted? Now, disenfranchise means they take the vote away. And she said, well, in order to do the right thing, yes, you would have to have another election. Yes. It doesn't matter. And I could see that it made perfect sense to the judges that you can't disenfranchise the ones who had voted, rather than even if it was counted incorrectly, because that's just the process. That's a wink, wink, nod, nod. So we pulled out this word disenfranchisement to say this is, oh, you just can't do that. And I think it was a vote of 2,000 or 3,000 people somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
I mean, all they'd have to do is say, hey, new election, boys. We don't believe that one counted, and it's been thrown out. So all you that voted, come down and vote some more, or again. But I think it's fairly certain that she won the majority of the votes, but the machine is behind him, and he's got untold money for attorneys, and she has to pay her own bill. So it's politics. Sucks. We're not going to get anywhere even discussing politics or figuring out what's bad about them. What we have to learn to do is educate ourselves about what they've done, what went wrong, and what we can throw out. Even if we throw the baby out with the bathwater, it would be better to go back to ground zero and start with the premise and the concepts in the Declaration of Independence, where we do have liberty and freedom, and when those liberties and freedoms are guaranteed. Thanks for watching.